Welcome to all devotees. Now we start today's Bhagavatam class. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrutam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiret Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. Hare Krishna Dandot Pranam. Now today we continuing Srimad Bhagwatam Canto 11 chapter 19, the perfection of spiritual knowledge. Shloka number 8 to 14. Sri Uddhava Uvacha Jnanam Vishuddham Vipulam Yatha एतत् वैराग्य विज्ञान युतम पुराणम आख्यायि विश्व ईश्वेश्वर विश्वमूर्ते त्वद्भक्ति योगम च महत् विमृग्यम तापत्रेण अभिहितस्य घोरे संतप्यमानस्य भव अध्वनीश पश्यामि न अन्यत् शरणं तव अंघ्रि द्वन्द्व वात् आतपत्रात अमृत विवर्षात दष्टम जनम संपतितम विले अस्मिन् काल अहिना क्षुद्र सुखो उरुतर्षम समुद्धर धर एनम कृपया अपवर्गहि वचोभिः आसिंचन महानुभाव श्री भगवान उवाच एथम एतत् पुरा राजा विश्वं धर्मभृतां वरम् अजात शत्रुपप्रच्छ सर्वेषां न अनुशृण्वताम् निवृत्ते भारते युद्धे सुहृत निधन विह्वल श्रुत्वा धर्मान् बहून् पश्चात् मोक्ष धर्मान् अपृच्छत् तान् अहं ते अभिधास्यामि देवव्रत मुखात् श्रुतान् ज्ञान वैराग्य विज्ञान श्रद्धा भक्ति उपबृहीतान् नव एकादश पंचत्रीन भावान् भूतेषु एन वै इक्ष एत अतैकम् अपि येषु तत् ज्ञानं मम निश्चितम् एतत् एव हि विज्ञानं न तथा एकेन एन यत् स्थिति उत्पत्ति अपेयान पश्येत भावानां त्रिगुण आत्मनम. Translation and purport by the Srila Prabhupada. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Uddhava said, O Lord of universe, O form of universe, please explain to me that process of knowledge which automatically brings detachment and direct perception of the truth, which is transcendental and which is traditional among great spiritual philosophers. This knowledge sought be elevated personalities, describes loving devotional service unto your lordship. My dear Lord, for one who is being tormented on the terrible path of birth and death and is constantly overwhelmed by the threefold misery, I do not see any possible shelter other than your two lotus feet, which are just like a refreshing umbrella that pours down showers of delicious nectar. O Almighty Lord, please be merciful and uplift this hopeless living entity who has fallen into the dark hole of material existence, where the snake of time has bitten him. In spite of such abominable condition, this poor living entity has tremendous desire to relish the most insignificant material happiness. Please save me, my Lord, by pouring down the nectar of your instructions, which awaken one to spiritual freedom. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Uddhava, just as you are now inquiring from me, similarly in the past King Yudhishthir, who considered no one his enemy, inquired from the greatest of the upholders of religious principles, Bhishma, while all of us were carefully listening. When the great battle of Kurukshetra had ended, King Yudhishthir was overwhelmed by the death of many beloved well-wishers, and thus, after listening to instructions about many religious principles, he finally inquired about the path of liberation. I will now speak unto you those religious principles of Vedic knowledge, detachment, self-realization, faith, and devotional service that were heard directly from the mouth of Bhishmadev. I personally approve of that knowledge by which one sees the combination of 9, 11, 5, and 3 elements in all living entities, and ultimately one element within those 28. When one no longer sees the 28 separated material elements which arise from a single cause, but rather sees the cause itself, the personality of Godhead, at that time, one's direct experience is called Vijnan or self-realization. Purport by the Srila Prabhupada, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Those who are able to cross over the darkness of material existence are called Mahat or great personalities. Secondary items like cosmic consciousness or universal control do not deviate the attention of such great souls from loving service to the Lord. Sri Uddhava desires to hear knowledge of the eternal religious principles that are the traditional aim and objective of all superior personalities. Lord Krishna, recognizing Uddhava's highly intellectual nature, has repeatedly recommended to him that one should achieve perfection by cultivation of transcendental knowledge. But the Lord has also clearly demonstrated that such knowledge must bring one to the point of loving devotional service to him, for otherwise it is useless. In this verse, Sri Uddhava corroborates Lord Krishna's statements that actual happiness is obtained by surrendering to his lotus feet. When the incarnation of Godhead, Prithu Maharaj, was crowned, the demigod Vayu presented him with an umbrella that constantly spread fine particles of water. The Lord's two lotus feet are similarly compared here to a wonderful umbrella that produces a constant shower of delicious nectar, the bliss of Krishna consciousness. Normally, speculative analytical knowledge terminates in all impersonal conception of the absolute truth, but the so-called bliss of merging into impersonal spiritual existence can never be compared to the bliss of Krishna consciousness, as stated here by Sri Uddhava. Krishna consciousness thus automatically constitutes perfect knowledge, since Lord Krishna is the ultimate shelter of all living entities. The words Abhihatasya or and Abhivarshat are insignificant in this verse. Abhihatasya indicates one who is being defeated on all sides by the onslaught of material nature, whereas Abhivarshat indicates the downpour of nectar that eliminates all of the problems of material existence. By our intelligence, we should look beyond the dull material body and nonsensical material mind to observe the unlimited shower of blissful nectar coming from the two lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Then our real good fortune will begin. Material life, so much cherished by the non-devotees in, is here compared to a dark hole filled with poisonous snakes. In material life, there is certainly no clear understanding of one's ultimate identity, of God or of the universe. Everything is vague and dark. In material life, the poisonous snake of time is always threatening, and at any moment, our near and dear ones will be killed by the mortal pangs of the serpent. Ultimately, we ourselves will also be bitten and killed by the poisonous effects of time. The word sampatitam indicates that the fall down of the living entity is complete. In other words, he cannot get up again. Sri Uddhava therefore appeals to the Lord to be kind to these poor fallen souls, humbly represented by his own self. If one receives the Lord's mercy, then even without any further qualification, one can go back home, back to Godhead. And without the mercy of Lord Krishna, the most Lord, austere, powerful, wealthy, or beautiful man will be pathetically crushed by the material world's machinery of illusion. The Supreme Personality of Godhead as described here is Mahanubhav, or the greatest, most powerful and most merciful personality, whose influence extends everywhere. The word's mercy is manifest in the form of these nectarian instructions, such as Bhagavad Gita and the Uddhav Gita being spoken here. The word Kshudra, Sukhoru, Tersham reveals the irony of material existence. Although material happiness is kshudra or ridiculous or insignificant, our desire to enjoy it is uru, tremendous. Our disproportionate hankering to enjoy that matter is certainly an illusory state of mind, and it gives us constant distress, keeping us bound up in the dark hole of material existence. Every living entity should put aside his false prestige based on ephemeral bodily qualifications and appeal sincerely to the Supreme Lord Krishna for his mercy. The Lord hears every sincere appeal from even the most fallen soul, and thus the effects of the Lord's mercy are wonderful. Although Jnanis, yogis, and fruity workers are laboriously enduring to achieve their respective goals, their position is precarious and uncertain. Simply by achieving the mercy of the Lord, however, one can very easily attain the highest perfection of life. Even one who is not a great or pure devotee of the Lord sincerely appeals to the Lord for his mercy. The Lord is sure to give it generously. The 9 elements are material nature, the living entity, the Mahatattva, false ego, and the 5 objects of sense perception, namely sound, touch, form, taste, and aroma. The 11 elements are the 5 working senses, the eyes, hands, leg, anus, and genitals, plus the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, the ears, touch, eyes, tongue, and nostril, along with the coordinative sense, the mind. The 5 elements are the 5 physical elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and sky. And the 3 elements are the 3 modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. As all living entities from mighty Lord Brahma down to an insignificant weed manifest material bodies composed of these 28 elements, the one element within all 28 is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul, who is all pervading within the material and spiritual worlds. One can easily understand that the material universe is composed of innumerable causes and effects. Since Lord Krishna is the cause of all causes, all secondary causes and their effects are ultimately non-different from the personality of Godhead. This understanding constitutes real knowledge or Dhyan, which is essential for perfecting one's life. The difference between Dhyan, ordinary Vedic knowledge, and Vijnan, self-realization, can be understood as follows. A conditioned soul, although cultivating with knowledge, continues to identify himself to some extent with the material body and mind, and consequently with the material universe. In trying to understand the world he lives in, the conditioned soul learns through Vedic knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the one supreme cause of all material manifestations. He comes to understand the world around him, which he accepts more or less as his word. As he progresses in spiritual realization, breaking through the barrier of bodily identification, and realizes the existence of the eternal soul, he gradually identifies himself as part and parcel of the spiritual world, Vaikuntha, at that time. He is no longer interested in the personality of Godhead merely as the supreme explanation of the material world. Rather, he begins to reorient his entire mode of consciousness so that the central objects of his attention is the personality of Godhead. Such a reorientation is required since the Supreme Lord is the factual center and cause of everything. A self-realized soul in the stage of Vijnan thus experiences the personalities of Godhead not merely as the creator of the material world, but as the supreme living entity existing blissful in his own external context. As one progresses in one's realization of the Supreme Lord in his own abode in the spiritual sky, one gradually becomes disinterested in the material universe and cease to define the Supreme Lord in terms of his temporary manifestation. A self-realized soul in the stage of Vijnan is not at all attracted by objects that are created, maintained, and ultimately destroyed. The stage of Jnana is the preliminary stage of knowledge for those still identifying themselves in terms of the material universe, whereas Vijnan is the mature stage of knowledge for those who see themselves as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Thus end the purport now prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Eno Tasmai Sri Gurave Namo Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guroho Sri Tapada Kamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavancha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raguna नाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजन सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितं च नमो ओम विष्णु पादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामीति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात देशतारिणे वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण दंडवत प्रणाम. This is the most important chapter, the perfection of spiritual knowledge. How we perfect in spiritual knowledge, and how we do our sadhana. Due to that, we achieve our aim of to go back home, back to Godhead. This is very nicely described in this shloka, and how our body create from 28 items that also describe here. So Prabhuji will tell you in detail. Vancha kalpatarubhecha kripa sindhubhe evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavabhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam Mataji. Thank you very much. Just give me a minute. Hare Ram. Hare Krishna. In fact, we are having one more session of how to go ahead with preaching going on right now. So I was busy in that session. Hare Krishna. So coming to this particular topic, which is very important, which Mataji has started since the day before yesterday. So here, let us concentrate on one of the most important shlokas which has come here, wherein Uddhava is talking. See, this whole chapter is going to describe us how those who are practicing speculative knowledge eventually give up their method, while a pure devotee remains engaged in devotional service eternally. And also the different practices of the yogis, beginning with yama, niyama, and all those things are going to be explained here. So Krishna has told Uddhava that if you are actually wise, if you know the truth of the self and possess the transcendental insight, then it is very easy for you to reject the world of dualities and the so-called knowledge meant for facilitating enjoyment. Instead, it is important that we engage ourselves in trying to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Master of all. That is Shuddha Bhakti Yoga. So, transcendental knowledge is greater than any ordinary pious activities, like chanting of mantras, etc. But pure devotional service is greater than even knowledge. So, here, if you see, when Uddhava was being explained all these things, Uddhava has mentioned a very important aspect in the shlokas. He's saying that this knowledge, which is sought by elevated personalities, describes the prema. And that is why it is always important that if you are really feeling torment because of these repeated cycles of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi and the Trigunas, then there can be nothing else but the shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. And that is why he has told, Uddhava says that, please save me, my Lord, by pouring down the nectar of your instructions, which awaken one to spiritual freedom. So whatever instructions Krishna is giving, they are the ones which will give us spiritual freedom. And that is why the importance of Krishna, that is why the importance of Bhagavad Gita or even this Uddhav Gita. Because Bhagavad Gita is nothing else but the instructions of Krishna, and they are like pouring of the nectar. So with this background, when I understands, Krishna understands, yes, Uddhava is now really ready. He is now giving more information. Because similar question was also asked by Yudhishthir. And that too, when Yudhishthir was overwhelmed, if you go through the chapter, Canto 1, chapter 8, 7 or 8, in which this all comes. And that is when he had asked about the path of liberation. And that time, all the religious principles of Vedic knowledge, detachment, self-realization, faith, everything Bhishmadev had explained. And Bhishmadev had explained it in presence of Krishna. So indirectly it was being approved by Krishna. And this is what Krishna confirms in the shloka today, that yes, he personally approves of the knowledge by which one sees the combination of 9, 11, 5 and 3 elements in all living entities, and ultimately one element within those 28. When no one no longer sees the 28 separated material elements which arise from single cause, which is Sarvakarana Karanam, Krishna, at that time was directly experienced is called Vijnana or self-realization. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. I welcome everyone who has joined us.